In this episode, we talk about how to find your voice. Get excited because this is Tiny Leaps. Big change. Big. Welcome to another episode of Tiny Leaps. Big changes, where I share simple strategies you can use to get more out of your life. My name is Greg Clunis, and in this episode, we are looking at how to find your voice. There are so many people listening to this show that are artists, or they're other podcasters, or they're coaches, or they aren't any of those things, and they just want to be better in tune with their opinions and what it is they believe on certain topics. And this question has been asked to me a number of times via Instagram direct messages or in the Facebook group. And so I thought I would put together what I think are some very simple approaches to finding that voice, because here's something I want you to truly take away from this. And this is the big secret in the industry. This is something I personally just recently learned, just recently realized after 520 something episodes of this show. Here's the secret. You already have your voice. You already know what your voice is. The problem isn't that you can't find your voice or that you don't have a voice. The problem is that you can't hear your voice. You can't actually hear your own voice. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you believe certain things. You have certain opinions. You engage in certain things over others. You do things in a particular way. All of those things make up your voice. If you are a writer and you write in a particular way that is different from everyone else, you say words in particular orders and use particular words that maybe others would not. That is your voice. You have a style that others would not use. No one can truly replicate that. Now, you may not realize it because when you look at it, you see what has always been. You can very clearly see someone else's voice. When you read something from J.K. Rowling, you know what her voice sounds like. It's a very particular style, but to her, that's just her. In the same way that to you, your voice is just you. And so it does not seem like a specific thing that you're doing. It doesn't seem like an activity you're engaged in, a message you're trying to get across, because for you, it's just normal. But for everyone else, it's a voice. For everyone else, you are speaking in your voice. So that's the first thing I want you to take away from this, and probably the most important thing I want you to take away from this is that you already have a voice. Stop searching for it. What you need to start doing is start listening to it. Start understanding what that voice looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels, what it thinks. Because the more you can understand that voice, the deeper you can go into being just yourself. And the first thing I'd recommend you do if you are trying to listen to your voice, to hear what it is you believe, is to stop for a moment and ask yourself what it is that you think. Ask yourself what your opinion is. Now, this might be hard in the beginning, quite frankly. It might be something that you stop and you ask yourself and there's no answer and you're not sure why. But you do need to do it. You need to get into the habit of actually noticing what you think, what you believe, how you are saying something, how you are doing something. The more you're capable of noticing it, even if it's forced, even if you have to actually stop and physically notice it, the more you are able to do that, the more refined your voice will become, the more you're going to be able to casually and naturally slip into that voice, the more you're going to be able to understand who you are and gain self-awareness. To do that, you have to stop and ask yourself in every situation. When you are writing something, stop and ask yourself, what do I truly think about this? How is this coming through? Read it back to yourself and see what it is that you're actually saying. Take a moment to notice what it is you think. Take a moment to notice how you write. Take a moment to notice what is important to you and what is not. All of these things make up your voice. The next thing I'd recommend is to record your thoughts. Now, this can be in public in this way that I do with a podcast or YouTube or Instagram or whatever platform you want to use, or it can be private. You can journal. You can do daily writing habit. You can speak into your phone and just record yourself speaking. It doesn't have to be shared with anybody. But one of the ways that I, quote unquote, found my voice, or rather learned to hear my voice, was from recording and releasing 520 something podcast episodes. I've only recently, in the last few months, started to realize what my voice is, started to realize what my opinions and my views are on certain topics. And that came from spending an enormous amount of time researching topics. That came from spending an enormous amount of time thinking about topics, thinking about what I want to say, putting together episodes, editing them, and choosing what to remove and what to keep, and publishing those things, and then having people push back on certain things, and having to ask myself, why do I believe that? What is this actually something that I truly believe, or am I just saying it? What is important to me and what is not? This has been a long journey over the last 4.5-ish years, where I have had to constantly listen to myself and constantly hear my thoughts on something and constantly remind myself of who it is that I am and what my voice sounds like. And you can do that as well. It doesn't have to be 500 episodes. It doesn't have to be in the form of a podcast. You can actively choose to listen to that voice. You can actively choose to record and review that voice and observe it as a third party. And then the last thing I recommend, if you feel comfortable, is to start sharing that voice. Start sharing those recordings if you do it via audio or written. It doesn't have to be with the world. It can be with a small group of people that you love and trust. But start sharing the things that you put out there and get feedback. Get other people to tell you what your voice sounds like, tell you what your voice is, because they can very clearly see and hear it. They can very clearly see what makes you different from the next person. You can't see that. But if they can clearly see it and you trust them to give you that information, ask them and they will tell you. And that can be one of the shortest ways to get to a better understanding of what your voice actually is and what is important to you and what is not important to you, by simply asking the people around you. But this does require that you share. This does require that you allow other people to hear that voice. So at the end of the day, the most important thing that I want you to get from this episode is that you already have a voice. You already have opinions and beliefs and viewpoints on different topics. You already speak and think in a certain way. You already process information in ways that other people do not. Your voice is created by the numerous experiences you've had in your life, from the environment you grew up in, from the books that you've read, from the music that you've listened to. Your voice and your viewpoint matters. It is important and it is unique to you, but it is already there. You do not need to find it. What you need to do is listen to it. What you need to do is recognize it for what it is. And what you need to do is start learning from it so that you can step into who you actually are. And while the steps and advice that I've given on this episode aren't the only ways to start listening to that voice, they can help. And so I recommend that you give them a try. Pick one and start it today. So I hope this was helpful to some of you out there. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think of this episode. Let me know what you are going through, why you want to, quote unquote, find your voice, and whether or not you already have, whether or not you've already started listening to what your voice is. Thank you so much for being here. And remember that all big changes come from the tiny leaps you take every day.